Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. As more people are moving to North Carolina, the cost of housing is going up. Now, state lawmakers are proposing a series of bills that could help speed supply and possibly drive down prices of homes and apartments. WRAL state government reporter Will Doran has been monitoring the bills, and he joins us today. Will, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Will, give us a quick overview. What are lawmakers proposing?
There's a couple different proposals on the table. Some of them would encourage developers to create affordable housing and, actually require them to sell some of their units below the market rate in exchange for having some regulations lifted on them. Others would just kind of change the way that houses get built in general, sort of just aimed at speeding up the process. Anyone who's tried to buy a home recently knows that there's not a ton on the market. And, if we can build homes more quickly, then, there will be more homes available. Maybe prices will go down.
Now, North Carolina has been growing forever, it seems. So why are we seeing this push now?
Part of it is the COVID-19 pandemic. With work from home booming, people are able to live wherever and work. They're not tied to a specific city for their job as much as they used to be. And, here in North Carolina, you can buy a big house with some land. It's not, you might still work in, an office that's based in New York City or DC or San Francisco, but, you don't necessarily have to be in a small apartment or condo in one of those cities. You can buy, so people are looking at Raleigh, say, hey, I can sell my condo, buy a big house in Raleigh and have money left over because, my condo in this big city is worth so much money.
So they got money to bid up and to outbid competitors locally who may not have as much equity, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's also, driving up the prices of homes and contributing to things like, where you basically have to waive inspections on houses or you have to put down just insane amounts of money on due diligence, all of those kind of factors in addition to the price of the home.
Well, it makes sense that fewer hurdles could lead to quicker construction and possibly more supply more quickly. But building permits and inspections kind of seem like an important thing, right? I mean, is anybody raising that?
Yeah, they exist for a reason, and it's really the intent is safety. And what we've heard from groups that lobby for city and county governments is, we recognize that maybe sometimes these permits could be done a little bit faster, but we don't want to necessarily speed it up too quickly because then you're sacrificing safety for speed. And they don't want to do that, obviously.
Shouldn't the market be taking care of some of this? Interest rates have been going up, making it harder for some people to buy. Less competition means lower prices, et cetera, et cetera. And
that's absolutely true. Yeah, I mean, interest rates have been going up, and that does put a squeeze on some people. However, there was actually just a study from U.S. News & World Report last month that said in the entire country, Raleigh had the number 1 hottest housing market. Durham had the number 3 hottest housing market in the country. So, really this whole area is, hotter. And part of that goes to the fact that the ratio of home prices here to wages is pretty good. We don't have obviously the highest wages in the country here, but, we've got decently affordable homes compared to some other places like San Francisco, like Boston, like Austin that, we kind of compete for in these tech jobs. And so that, especially as our tech industry here has grown, has, that segment of the market has really kept a lot of upward pressure on housing prices.
And that gets back to what you were saying earlier about the buying power of people moving into this market.
Right, exactly. It could be that, locals, are facing a lot more pressure and a tougher time buying a house than people who are moving here from out of state.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive a little bit deeper into what lawmakers are proposing to loosen building restrictions. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL state government reporter Will Doran about a series of bills aimed at boosting the state's housing supply and driving down housing costs. Well, a lot of these bills seem to be regulating things that are typically handled at the municipal level. Why is the state involved?
Well, because they think that the municipal leaders have kind of dropped the ball a little bit on this. You've got some bills that would really speed up this permitting process. And they say, city governments and county governments after the recession of 2008, they let a lot of jobs stay vacant because builders weren't building as much. So they didn't need, code enforcement officials and inspectors and, zoning people. But now that things have just really snapped back really quickly, they haven't been able to staff back up quickly enough and, get those permits approved. And then so you've got builders just, sitting around waiting for months at a time. Then inflation happens and, suddenly the price of materials goes up and maybe they have to just ditch the entire project. And so then that parcel of land just stays empty for a year or two until somebody else decides to take a gamble on it and, kind of start the process all over again. And so a lot of the bills we're seeing are aimed at speeding up that permitting process. There's also a really interesting bill that Durham County is asking for. Apparently, Durham has some, unused county-owned properties that they want to turn into housing specifically for city and county employees. And that basically means teachers and cops. Obviously, there are more people who work for the city and county, but that's kind of the big pool of employees they have. And they say, people should be able to live in the communities that they serve. And so they're asking the legislature to basically give them permission to become a government landlord for some of their own employees. We'll see how that bill goes. It's gotten filed in the past and didn't go anywhere, but this year things are even hotter. Durham's the number 3 hottest market, as I said. So maybe there will be a little bit more pressure at the legislature to actually approve that.
Well, let's break down some of the other bills. Let's start with House Bills 332 and 320. They both deal with inspectors.
They would allow cities to basically subcontract their permit inspections to private companies. And what we heard from some builders is that, because, things can get so backlogged that, this is already something that can happen for commercial buildings. And they say, commercial construction is actually kind of a lot more complicated than residential construction. You've got elevators you need to inspect and, all sorts of, things that don't really come into play with just, a house. And so they say, bring in outside inspectors and let them kind of speed up the process. And even though the cities would be paying those inspectors, they say the cities would actually still be making money because these permit fees that the builders have to pay are just so high. I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars that, even if they're, having to hire outside people to get the work done, by being able to do more work, they're going to, the city's going to benefit in the end. And they say also by having the city pay these inspectors rather than the builders, that also, gets rid of any sort of conflict of interest concerns that you might have for safety, which several lawmakers did raise. But the bill sponsors said they hope that solves that issue.
And House Bill 252, that one deals with jurisdictions. What's that one about?
Yeah, so that's when you have a big development that goes into multiple county or city lines. And so, the developer's trying to, put it together, but, one city has, rules you have to, do this many amount of trees, and then the other place says you have to actually do a higher amount of trees for your buffers, or all sorts of different rules for for light pollution, things like that. And instead of having to deal with all 3 or 4 of those different sets of rules, this bill would let the builder just basically pick one set of rules and go with that. And I mean, it can get really complicated. I remembered covering an apartment complex that was getting built in the city of Morrisville a few years back, and it was partially in Wake County, partially in Durham County, and in the city of Morrisville. And so they're having to figure out, okay, where are these kids going to go to school, for people who live there? And, okay, people who live in this apartment are going to pay taxes here. People who live in this apartment are going to pay taxes there. It was just a massive headache. And this bill would just end situations like that by just saying, okay, everyone who lives in this development, even if they're technically located in this place, we're just going to decide that they pay taxes to this other place to just kind of speed things up and streamline things. So, and that's pretty popular. The cities and the counties are on board with that. It seems like that doesn't really have a lot of opposition.
Are there other bills?
There's one that I'm really interested in watching. It's got a big list of bipartisan sponsors and some pretty influential people in the Senate. The lead sponsor is Senate Majority Leader Paul Newton, one of the top-ranking Republicans in the state. And it would lift some regulations. I kind of mentioned this earlier, I believe. It would lift some regulations on builders, say, you don't have to follow all of the rules that this city wants you to follow if you agree to sell X percent of your houses below the market rate. And it would specifically be aimed at government workers and first responders, nurses, teachers, cops, folks like that. And again, and it's kind of comes back to this issue we've been talking about where, people who are moving in from out of state, where they're coming from places where they can sell their houses for a ton of money, buy something comparable in North Carolina for, way more than, locals have been used to paying for it. housing prices are just going up so far that, a lot of people who work these kind of middle class jobs are just finding themselves priced out of, any sort of decently sized city. And so that bill is aimed at kind of carrot and a stick, forcing developers to lose some money on some of their houses, but in exchange for not having to follow all of the rules and regulations that they normally would. So that hasn't moved yet, but I think when it does, it's got, pretty good shot. It's, it'd be a sweeping change, but it's an interesting theory.
Well, I wonder how much of this actually is focused on housing affordability versus just giving developers a break.
Well, I mean, that's been a huge question in tons of city council elections all over the state. And it's a question now too. I mean, the lead sponsors on a lot of these bills, not all of them, but a lot of them are developers themselves. And so, that has some lawmakers a little skeptical, like, are you just is this self-interested? Are you just looking out for yourself and your buddies? Or, is this actually, going to, help the average person buy a home? I think some people say, well, why can't it be both? I mean, that's kind of the theme of a lot of these is, if we make life easier on developers, then they'll be able to build more houses more quickly. And, if the demand stays the same, then if you raise up the supply, costs should go down, right? That's basic economics.
So what are the chances that some of these, all of these are passed? What kind of support do they have?
Yeah, I think that there's a low chance that every single one becomes law, but there's a pretty high chance that at least one, if not a few of them, become law. And, I think kind of summing things up was something that Raleigh Democratic Representative Cynthia Ball said the other day. She said, if you're in North Carolina, anywhere in the state, that this is a problem. But then, she launched into some, concerns that she had about some of the bills. So it's a kind of thing where everyone recognizes that this is an issue the legislature needs to deal with. There's just obviously a difference of opinions on how exactly to do that. But there is at least agreement on this is something we should tackle. So, there does seem to be bipartisan effort to, actually do something here. And we're just going to have to wait and see what comes of it.
Well, I know you'll be on top of it and that you'll keep our viewers and readers up to speed. Thanks, Will.
It's an important topic. Thank you.
That's WRAL State Government reporter Will Doran. For all of our coverage on bills moving through the State House, visit the NC Capitol section of WRAL.com. I'm Jack Hagel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.
Leave a comment and share this video with your friends. With daily uploads, there will always be a conversation.